The turn of events. I realise these videos are probably not interesting to 99.9% of people, but I'm trying to stay awake still, so I've got nothing better to do than film and upload, and maybe the information might help someone's trip, help someone with their trip. So essentially, again, if you watch the other videos, I took 4 flights and then ended up in Salalah, and then from Salalah just got straight on a bus. Not straight on a bus, I had to hang around, dipping and diving out of sleep in the airport until later that day. Took a bus. The bus was like unbelievable. You could use the word xenophobia. Every time a foreigner got on the bus, even though everyone had prepaid for tickets, there was no queue system, which really only applied to the fact that if you were local, you were given first priority, which I don't have a problem with so much, but I think you should have allocated seats. But it's the idea of people just pushing in based on their locality, based on their nation, kind of, and their citizenship, rather. Again, I'm not articulating myself very well, as I'm still drunk. Sorry, not drunk, tired. Drunk but tired. So that was a really kind of interesting thing to see. I took the same bus like 2 years ago, and the exact same thing happened, but to see it with that reflection just kind of proves the point and emphasizes that really, like, the level of xenophobia here is unbelievable. And I'm not saying that I support Pakistanis and Bangladeshis and Indians who are primarily the victims of this, because they do the exact same thing and they behaved in the exact same way. You know, they were pushing amongst one another, to get on a bus, which frankly, I just don't understand what's so difficult about, if you're there first, then you deserve to get on the bus first. And consequently, people that come there after expect to just push in based on what attributes. And it's really funny as well, because it's an Islamic society, so obviously women are second class, so that's to just be expected. All women get to board first and are let's say, pushed on by their husbands, because they then reserve the seats for the husbands and the rest of the family. One thing I really didn't like, aside from the fact that you can't reserve seats and it should be first come, first served, is that why do children who have no responsibilities, they don't make money, they're children, their parents sustain them until they're old enough to work, why does a child get to take a seat before another adult? I find that disgusting when children are placed before other adults. It's the ultimate level of disrespect, in my opinion. And it made me very angry, the fact that I had to wait for someone else's children to board first. And they weren't young children. We're not talking about 4 or 5 years old. We're talking about like 14, 15-year-old teenagers that you could barely call children and can probably get married, at least in this country. So that was a bloody nightmare. Everyone that's foreign, irrespective if you're white or brown, Pakistani or English, we all had to get pushed back to the bus continuously until we were eventually all on the back row, where they wanted us in the first place, of course. And the back row, even though there's AC on the bus, it's above the engine and the seats don't recline. So it was a nightmare 9-hour journey, really, really horrible. And I get to Nizwa, which is the only reason I really didn't cancel this trip was for Nizwa. I didn't expect it to be like the next amazing thing, but not getting the Yemen visa and having to go to Salalah and then double back to Muscat, because if I can't go to Yemen, I don't want to stay in Salalah. A, because I've been there, seen a lot. B, it's super expensive now, it's peak season. Like the quality of the hotels for £70-60 a night, which is the base, is just not worth spending that kind of money. I can go to Abu Dhabi and get a 4 or 5-star hotel for the same amount of money. I don't know why anyone would spend that kind of money in Salalah. I understand it's quite cool this time of season and it is pleasant to be in the rain, but the prices of the hotels are absolutely insane. A London 4-star is cheaper. So I decided to go back to Muscat and take this horrible bus. And then I get to Nizwa, where I was essentially transiting through for 1 night and 2 solid days, 2 full days, because I anticipated it's going to be this gorgeous historic city, as the pictures show. But here's the thing, you never trust Google, and I should probably know this after experiencing Uzbekistan, because Uzbekistan is the leader in fabricating history. So they take supposedly historic sites, they actually demolish them. And a lot of these sites are made of mud and wattle and daub. They're kind of, it's very easy to just kind of like hatchet it away with your bare fingers and it will be gone the next. So what they do is they reconstruct everything so it's like a Disneyland, to try and entice a lot of Gulf state tourists, because Gulf state tourists, frankly, will just go to a place if it's pretty, if there's a Starbucks, if there's a McDonald's. And you may think that's a stereotype. That really is the case, and anyone that's honest from the Gulf that isn't inclined to do that would certainly be able to acknowledge that that is indeed a truth. And it's not just Gulf state people, but it is primarily the target audience for these redevelopment projects. So they create all of these fake tourist villages, and they're literally replicas of one another. It's the same blueprint that's being utilized irrespective of the country you're in. You can be in Uzbekistan. I've seen the same things in Europe. I've seen the same things, neighboring Central Asian countries like Kyrgyzstan. It's the same projects, the same signage. It's the tackiest thing ever. So basically, it really is a mirror of Disneyland or Universal Studios. You go in, it's just, the kind of fake, theatrical scenery you'd expect in a 1950s movie, and then that's passed off as this ancient 2,000-year-old mosque or fortress. There's nothing left that's authentic within a lot of these constructions. And if you see the actual process of so-called redevelopment, it is, like I said, knocking down virtually anything, which, to be honest, is a necessary thing to do anyway. If you're restoring a mud building, it's pretty much impossible to renovate it on cost without any expertise. You need someone that's kind of passionate and inclined to work with original materials, and no one's going to do that. So you're left with a situation where you're employing cheap labour to create something that's going to be of value when both of these things are completely fundamentally opposed. The cheap labour isn't going to put effort into creating something that's worthwhile, and from a skill base, you're not going to get that quality product. So it just doesn't work, period. And it's a short-term development project because it's a money laundering scheme, essentially. Money will get siphoned off to friends, family members, and that's the aim, that's the purpose of these projects. And short-term, of course, so long as the paint doesn't start peeling in the next 5 years, it looks good once it's started for a certain target audience already specified, and then you have to repeat the exact same procedure again. So to conclude and wrap up, from a genuine touristic perspective, in terms of like adventure tourism or people that are interested in cultural tourism at its essence, there's no value in this place. Absolutely zero value. I wouldn't invest a single penny in it. It's really not worth coming to. So I would leave it at that, and consequently, because of this, and it really is that bad. I'm not exaggerating here. It's far worse than Bukhara and Khiva and Samarkand. And I'm not saying those places are bad. I'm just saying they follow those principles of destruction and repetition of the same modern developmental projects under the auspice that it's sponsoring heritage, when actually it's quite the contrary to that. It's a kind of money scheme, both money laundering, and it does sustain a local economy for a bit, but realistically, you're just going to get the same kind of hierarchical system, and it's usually a mafia, a clique, oligarchy of people that get the contracts, get the construction contracts, and end up essentially, becoming, like I said, a little oligarchy. So it doesn't actually filter down to the average person. So there's absolutely no positive to any of these projects whatsoever. None. Long term, it's far worse. So because of all this, I arrived, and then just decided this has no value. Like 2 hours was too much. So 2 days, I was like, there's no way. So luckily, my ticket, because I hate things that aren't refundable, as you my audience may well know, the ticket was thankfully refundable. And actually, to add a bit of contrary, kind of as a devil's advocate into the equation, the customer service I received from the company was probably one of the best customer service email feeds I've ever had in my life. I emailed them at 8:30 when everything else is seemingly closed, so I don't know why this. Maybe they just have one really efficient 24-hour customer service rep, but they emailed me back within minutes, literally, and I then changed the ticket because it was within 24 hours, so free change. So that was really good. And then I went to the hotel because I realised the hotel had free cancellation until 6 p.m. same day, which is really rare. So I got there, and that was also under reconstruction as well. Like everything, it wasn't particularly pleasant. The pool wasn't even usable, and all this kind of stuff. So I basically went to get my bag, and I was about to leave, and then interestingly, there was a lady that works there from West Africa, and I was speaking to her for like 20-30 minutes. She was really lovely, and had a really interesting conversation just about kind of the labour market here, and general wages and the perspective of that labour market in Oman. And so that was probably the highlight of the entire 4 days, to be honest. And then now I'm going back to Muscat, which I've been to before, So I'm not really that thrilled to replicate that, but at least it's more comfortable, and I have 5-6 days to just chill out there, get some admin done, go to some coffee shops, maybe the beach, something like that. And yeah, that's basically going to be 5 days of solid travel, and then got to go back to Salalah, and then it's basically Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, Doha, back to Sharjah, back to Abu Dhabi, Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan, and then that's the ultimate game changer, to see if 2 embassies are correct in what they say about the federal Iraqi Republic being obtainable, let's say, visitable, if that's even a word, from Iraqi Kurdistan, because visa on arrival would, kind of discern that should be achievable, but posts online state quite the contrary. And you can't always trust embassies. Usually they're staffed by people that haven't even lived in their own country for quite some time, and they don't know the realities of being on a frontier, a conflict frontier. It's really down to what that person at that time thinks and where their allegiances lie. So that's going to change the trip drastically, and I've got a backup plan for that as of a few days ago. Instead of flying back from Erbil to the UAE, because then I would have to stay in the UAE for quite some time, or Kuwait, because I fly to Nepal from Kuwait. I would go back into Turkey through the new land crossing that they have, and then from Turkey I would go to Yerevan, and I'd fly same airline, Yerevan Abu Dhabi, just before my flight from Kuwait, and get a very overpriced transit from there. And that's basically the next couple of weeks. So yeah, that's the gist. But to reiterate, if people are obviously thinking about coming to Oman, I think it's nice enough for maybe a week or so, because it's slightly different to other Gulf states. It's a kind of more, you could say, like a more rural, redneck, chilled out place. Very safe, of course, there's no crime. But in terms of excitement, I really see it as a minimal. If you have a car and you can go to some kind of places of geological importance, nice terrains and sceneries, then that's the optimum. But in terms of actual architectural kind of sites or prowess, I don't think there's any. And what there is, they're either new or replicated to the point where they are fundamentally a complete reproduction. So I'll leave it at that, and I hope you don't decide to come from this. It's really one of the worst places.